Royal Highness, Prince Turki Al Faisal, Your Excellencies, Dr. Qasim Al Qasabi and Dr. Majid Al Fayyad, distinguished guests and colleagues, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of King Faisal's strategic priorities is a culture built on excellence, intended to create and inspire memorable positive moments for our valued staff. The organization is determined and committed to create venues for our staff to learn, grow, and develop. Among its many initiatives is The Talk, a platform through which inspirational members of societies who, because of their persistence and passion, have made a difference, are invited to Q&A session. Your Highness, this is neither ABC 2020 or 60 Minutes, nor are they Barbara Walter or Peter Jennings. They are even more than that. They are a group of young Saudis, professionals in their own right, who have come together to bring forth this initiative in their own right. Without any further delay, we will proceed with this short introductory video. Thank you.
Born in the Hijazi region, in the city of Mecca, on February 15, he is the 8th and youngest son of the late King Faisal and Iffat al-Thunayyan. He began his schooling at the Model School in Taif, and in 1963 went on to obtain his high school diploma at the Lawrenceville School in New Jersey. He subsequently pursued an undergraduate degree in School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University. He also pursued further studies at Princeton University, Cambridge University, and University of London. It was in 1973 that he was appointed as an advisor at the Royal Court, and in 1977 as Director General of the General Intelligence Directorate, Saudi Arabia's main foreign intelligence service, which he served as head until 2001. In 2002, he was appointed ambassador to the United Kingdom and Republic of Ireland by the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Fahd bin Abdulaziz. In 2005, he went on to serve as ambassador to the United States until his retirement in 2007. A founder and trustee of the King Faisal Foundation. He's also the chairman of the King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies. Additionally, he is a trustee of the Oxford Islamic Center at Oxford University and the Center for Contemporary Arab Studies at Georgetown University. He has several honorary PhD degrees from the University of Ulster in Ireland, University of Hong Kong in Korea, and the University of Shanghai. He is a visiting professor at Georgetown University and an honorary professor at the Fondazione Mediterraneo, in addition to being an active participant in the World Economic Forum's annual meeting, the Global Economic Symposium, and the Clinton Global Initiative's annual meeting. He's also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Library of Alexandria, Board of the Beirut Institute, Council for Arab and International Relations, Al-Quds Fund and Endowment, and Advisory Council of the Munich Security Conference. He is married to Her Highness Nof bint Fahd bin Khalid Al Saud, with whom he has 6 children. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. This is His Royal Highness Prince Turki bin Faisal Al Saud. Welcome to the talk.
Your Highness, allow me to introduce your host, Ms. Nada Al Harbi, Director of Equality Management. Thank you.
Your Royal Highness, it's with a great pleasure that we have you here at King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center. Once again, thank you for accepting our invitation to be with us this morning, and welcome to the talk.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, thank you for hosting me, doctors, and all the audience here. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I don't know who collected these pictures and events about me, but I wish I had them when I was in the intelligence service.
Thank you. Today we are really looking forward to this session. We are so eager to learn from you. Just by being here with us, and honestly, just by the advertisement of this session, we get so inspired. We have a lot of questions, and I'm sure that probably the time won't permit us to ask them all, but we'll try our best. Your presence is a great inspiration to all of us, so thank you again. So about King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center, on November 11, 1970, King Faisal, Allah yarhamu, once said that this organization is built to serve the community of Saudi Arabia and the community of others. Now being here with us at King Faisal, how does that make you feel?
I'm very proud of the hospital. Needless to say, from the beginning, the declarations of the late king about the hospital were not necessarily about the hospital, but about his view of life and his view of Saudi Arabia were crystallized in an interview that he gave a day before his death to an American television reporter who asked him, how do you see Saudi Arabia in 50 years' time? And his answer was, I see Saudi Arabia in 50 years' time as a wellspring of radiance for humanity. مصدر إشعاع للإنسانية. And that basically encapsulates what King Faisal stood for throughout his life. And of course, this hospital is one of those accomplishments that he pursued and successfully implemented. Unfortunately, the operational aspects of the hospital followed his death rather than being done in his lifetime. But being here and in front of the people in front of me now gives me great joy, and to think that he would have been here himself to see you, I think would have given him the greatest joy.
Absolutely. I mean, I could not agree more, and I can speak on behalf of every employee at King Faisal that his soul's honestly on the corridors of the organization. We carry his vision and his image, and we do believe that King Faisal is a radiance, but alhamdulillah. So allow me to take you back to memories. Let's travel back in time. Do you remember that day when you were walking down the stairs and you froze by the side of your father, late King Faisal, asking you about school? This story is known as the cold shower. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, it was a very cold shower. We were in school in Taif. It's a boarding school. And he and my late mother established it in the 1940s, not only to provide education for their children, but also for the community in Taif and in other places in the kingdom. And it was the first, I think, school in the kingdom that was untraditional in the traditional sense of schools at that time. Not only because it was boarding, but also because it brought a curriculum that was designed and formulated by, at that time, the top-ranking educational institutions in Egypt. They invited the community to send their children to the school. the entrance to the school had a sign on top of it which said, the Taif Model School for Boys and Girls. And you can imagine in the 1940s having that ambition to put boys and girls in the school was remarkably innovative, to say the least. Unfortunately, the community around Taif and in other places in the kingdom were reluctant to send their daughters to the school. And a year after the opening of the school, the girls' section was closed. But the boys' section thrived. And I was 5 years old when I was sent to the school, and not for anything except that all my brothers were in the school and I felt alone at home, and I wanted to join them. That sort of attenuated itself in later scholarly ambitions of mine. But anyway, so on a monthly basis, we used to have a weekend that we would spend with our families, and the bus would take us from Taif to Jeddah, where my parents were living at the time. And we would arrive on Thursday afternoon to Jeddah, and by Friday afternoon we'd have to get back on the bus and go back to Taif. And when the time came to go to the bus on Friday and leave, I didn't go, basically. I stayed behind, and that night I slept in Jeddah, and in the early morning the next day, of course, there was a car waiting for me to take me back to school in Taif. And I was walking down the stairs, and it coincided that when I was leaving, he was also leaving for his office to work. So he looked up at me and he said, "What are you doing here?" And he had a way of looking at you by raising one of his eyebrows, the right one, never forget. You know, I can't imitate it, but if you can figure his picture and see his eyebrow going up, which meant that you're in trouble. And I stammered actually, I didn't know what to say, and he said, "You know, you can stay here all your life in the house, you know, but you'll not be anybody. You'll be like this couch I'm sitting on. So if you want to get a life for yourself, you'd better, you know, toe the line and adhere to the discipline of the school." And that was the coldest shower I've ever had in my life. And I sort of put my head down and you know, very, very sheepishly walked to the car and got in and was driven to school. But it was a very, how can I put it, very cold experience.
That can help your Royal Highness. I'm sure at least one of us had one of those cold showers. Education is something the government worked really hard to improve in our beloved nation. And with the education rate 98.4, we have to thank late King Faisal and Queen Effet for moving the education forward to where it is. A special thank as a Saudi lady for the early movement of pushing education for female. Otherwise, probably I would not be here interviewing you. At King Faisal, also we acknowledge the importance of education. It's actually one of our strategic priority to be a source of knowledge through education and training. The government also helped us with this, with the recent allocation of around 198.8 billion pushed to education and training. So what are your thoughts on that?
Not much, actually, other than to say that it's wonderful to see that in a short span of time, the accomplishment of having universal education is a reality rather than an exception or an ambition. And I remember when I was growing up, the pursuit by the government of education not only concentrated on the towns and villages, but also on what was then a very important section of Saudi society, was the Bedouins in the desert, who had to migrate seeking pasture for their flocks every year from one place to another. So actually mobile schools were part of that endeavor, and teachers were assigned to move with the tribes when they moved seeking that fodder and feed for their flocks. So the education covered all of society. And of course, with the accruing of more economic capability and more financial capability, it became even more broad as an endeavor, and you see the results today. And it can never be a static situation in terms of education. There will always have to be evolution and development in acquiring skills and know-how and so on. And alhamdulillah, and now the kingdom throughout, I traveled last year by train to Al Qasim, just to try out the train system. And we passed by several areas, several places on the way, Majma'a and other places. And even there now you have universities, which is a remarkable achievement. So this is something that gives me great pleasure and pride in the kingdom, but also looking forward to even more in the future, inshallah.
Absolutely. We used to take this road also. I'm from Qasim as well, so
Yes.
I really can relate to what you're saying. So to conclude this, one of the most proving strategies to push your kids to achieve their goals is cold shower in the morning. I'm going to ask you a few personal questions, if you allow me. I cannot resist but not to ask you that. So do you still read newspapers?
I do.
So in one of the recent release on figures, especially in the usage of the social media, Saudi Arabia ranked the 4th worldwide with the most tweeting countries, with around 11.4 Twitter accounts. Do you have a Twitter account, Your Highness?
I do have a Twitter account. I'm not a tweeter, but I do get, morning reviews of news from Twitter. So that's how it happens with me.
Absolutely. And the reason why we brought this, Your Royal Highness, is we cannot deny the importance and the influence of social media. So we wanted to take the opportunity of having you here with us to give us some advice on how to actually use Twitter and other social media accounts in more wise way.
I'm the wrong man to ask for that because I'm a non-user. But I do enjoy some of the, of course, who doesn't have a WhatsApp account? And so I have one, and people volunteer to send me things on WhatsApp. I would say 95% of them are very pleasant. The 5%, we all get that, I think. And so for me, it's fun to follow that engagement with others. But as I said, on Twitter, I'm not a tweeter. Facebook, I'm not. How can I put it? I'm not a face shifter or a face. And The other social media aspects, of course, are totally Greek to me. So,
on other note, Your Royal Highness, one of your, mashallah, expertise is the former expert in Saudi intelligence. Now, recently, King Faisal had won a very prestigious award in disaster management. And with your expertise in crisis management, we want to learn from you what is the most important skills as individual or organization we need to obtain to manage a crisis.
you have to get good information. And in order to do that, you have to have reliable sources of information and not to accept facile relays of information from one source. I remember when I was in the intelligence service, there was always a rule that any piece of information we get, we have to verify, at least through two sources. Of course, there were also always exceptions, but the general rule was that you cannot just depend on one source of information, because information is the basis of your decision making. And in an organization that relays information to others who are superior, you have to be sure that what they get from you has the highest standard of truth in it and reliability. So I would say that the accuracy of information is the basic element in any crisis management attempt or activity.
Absolutely, we can really relate so much. One of the words you mentioned was reliability, and we have started our journey to become more reliable when it comes to care provision. So thank you so much for your advice on this. Also, King Faisal is going through the transformation journey of becoming non-for-profit organization. With that comes, the challenge of change management. What's your thought on that?
If there are the resources, fine. But non-profit is a very admirable and very laudable endeavor. And having a trust fund, if you like, to make it available to you would be a wonderful achievement, not just for King Faisal Specialist Hospital, but for any organization that wants to pursue non-profit. My brothers and sisters and I, after the death of the late king, established the King Faisal Foundation, which is a non-profit foundation. And its basic trust fund was developed from the late king's inheritance, but also contributions, not just from us, but also from other members of society at that time. And that is why I think the foundation has been relatively successful in managing its own affairs, because it has the financial resources to take on whatever responsibilities or activities it wants to pursue. So yes, if the King Faisal Specialist Hospital is going that route, there will have to be financial capability to do that. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
Yes, of course. So we talked about, education, we talked about information, and we talked about resources and financial stability. That's a really
what
good...
else is there to talk about?
I mean, that's a great foundation that we can start from. Hindsight bias is one of the human factors that we look at when we look at patient safety. I could not resist but to ask this question, because I'm a patient safety by specialty. But what happens is, after the fact, we look back to what went wrong and we look at ways of improving it proactively. If Prince Turki would look back to his life, is there anything he would do differently or change?
I'm sure there is. And you put me on the spot now, because I have to think of what to do that. But I would distinguish between learning from hindsight and regret. I don't regret anything I've done. Even the bad things I've done, they were expressions of me and my identity and so on. And I hope I learned from them. So no regrets, but definitely reviewing what you've done and having moments of self introspection and retrospection is important in one's life to go on. But I never regret what I did, as I said.
Absolutely. Reflection is something we do a lot at the organizational behavior and at the individual behavior. Hearing it from you also will put more emphasis on the importance of it's okay to look back, it's okay to learn from our mistakes, it's okay to have few regrets, but it should not be the overall picture. We've been so much hammered by positive thinking, but it's okay to do some mistakes. Thank you for sharing this. I know this is personal, so thank you again for sharing this with us. 2020 marks two important dates for King Faisal. 50 years since placing the cornerstone and 45 years since the operation. If we can tell the late King Faisal something about his vision, what would that be, in your opinion?
I think he would be very pleased to see that his vision, as I mentioned, about being a wellspring of radiance for humanity is being accomplished. And it's a cumulative achievement. Didn't happen overnight. And it took all of these years since his death to walk in that path that he hoped the kingdom would become. There is still much to accomplish, of course, and I think this is why young people like yourselves here have a great task ahead of you, which is to go forward in that endeavor. But I think he would be pleased with what has been accomplished, and knowing how he looked upon himself and his life, he would have wanted even more. He was never satisfied with simply sitting back and saying, aha, we've done it. No, he would have always looked to the future and wanting to do more.
If we had the honor to speak to him behind grave, we will tell him that King Faisal administration is always looking for doing more and more and more. I know I've been holding this question to myself, but I think that maybe a few of our attendees would like to ask you a few questions, if you allow it.
Sure.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
First, it's always been a bliss watching your interviews, Your Royal Highness, and it just feels great attending one.
May I ask who you are, sir?
Abdullah Daghelbi. I kept hushing my heart when hearing your answers. Getting into my question, in a recent interview with Prince Abdulaziz, your son, he mentioned that when he was recommended for his position as a deputy chairman at the time for the Sport Authority, he called you for advice, and you advised him very simply and shortly, efficiently, sam'an wa ta'a, for the call of duty. So my question is, do you recall a time when you got your first major assignment? Who did you seek advice from, and what was the advice? Thank you.
It brings back another cold shower that I had from my late father. I remember when I finished my schooling and came back, and basically I had not a job to do, and I went to him one day in the morning when he was going to the office. What I had intended to say to him is that now that I am finished with schooling, I basically would like your views on what to do. what came out of my mouth was something else. And it was, I finished my schooling, and what is the job that you will put me in? And again, the eyebrow came up, and he looked at me and he said, I never gave your brothers any job. Go seek a job for yourself. And that was, for me, too late, to say that's not what I meant to say. I got the cold shower, and so through some other people, I was recommended for a post in the Royal Diwan as a counselor, and the rest is my life. But that's how I got my first job.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. And one of the convention, I think, or conferences, Bill Clinton mentioned that he was a friend of yours. You studied together.
Yes.
And he mentioned that everybody knew that you will turn out to be something big. So I think you have those traits. It was just the convenient time.
Well, that's a matter of opinion.
We tend to agree with Bill Clinton. Nurad, we have time for other questions.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sarah Al-Awhili. I have a question. With your rich experience and the positions that you had, you remained humble. And this is well known by everyone. If you have an advice for those leaders and future leaders who get a position, what would it be? Because some people, when they get a degree or a position, they might act differently. So what is your advice?
I never really gave it much thought. For one, it depends what you want in life. If you want applause and recognition and all of the artifacts of position that you accomplish, you can probably get that, but I think in the process, if that's all that you want, you will probably lose something of yourself in that. And in order not to lose yourself, you have to remember who you are. Basically, a human being as part of an organism, which is humanity. And if you have something to contribute to that organism, then do the best without seeking the recognition or the applause or so on, but rather getting your satisfaction from doing what you do, rather than from what others place upon you, either as admiration or as plaudits or something like that. So humility is very important, and this is what all of us have been brought up with through our Islamic heritage and the example of the life of the Prophet Muhammad. He exemplifies all of the ideals that any individual can seek to try to achieve or to accomplish, especially humility. Imagine as a prophet of God and a leader of a community, yet he maintained his humility in the community by, as an example, he used to sew the tears in his clothes himself instead of having someone do it for him. So that standard of a role model is there for all of us to learn from. And of course, in other religions as well and other societies, there are role models that can be equally identified as their basic character for being a role model was humility. So that is what I advise anybody who has ambitions in the future, is to maintain humility without losing the ambition.
Thank you so much. Especially in our industry, healthcare, looking at our services, looking at our client, this is very important that every single person of us remind themselves every morning what their mission, what kind of character they want to bring to those clients who are considered, sick and tired. So thank you for that. We still have one more question.
Assalamu alaikum. Samar Al-Hamoud, colorectal surgeon.
أهلاً وسهلاً.
As you know, media plays a very important role nowadays, and the achievement we have, whether in the medical field or none, is more or less
I can't hear you very well.
media plays a very important role nowadays, and the achievement, whether us as a medical field and other national achievement, is more or less similar to the international and even more standard. What would be your advice to reflect positively on our achievement in the international platforms?
Just to be ourselves and to recognize that we are a member of as I mentioned, of an organism, humanity, that hopefully will contribute to the welfare of that humanity. But media is how can I put it? Especially in the world today, and especially with social media available to everybody, it's a very useful tool, but also it's a very dangerous one, because you basically cannot regulate media. You can regulate government. You can regulate society as a society, whether it is in its culture, in its history, and so on. But the distribution of information is impossible to regulate, in my view, and a mission impossible, if you like, to try to regulate it. So the most important thing, as you mentioned, in international media towards us, is to keep engaged with them, not to cut yourself from them, or not to have an attitude that they're bad to us, therefore we should not talk to them, or we should not engage with them, and so on. And I think this was one of the main faults, if you like, or drawbacks for the kingdom, is that we were never engagers with the media, and we allowed others to claim that they were speaking for us, the so-called experts and pundits of opinion in media circles, not just in the West, but wherever they may be. So my view is that we have much to be proud of as a people, and we should not hesitate in having others come and see what we have accomplished, but we must recognize that also these people who will come and see what we consider to be great achievements will also report on what inevitably in any society there will be negative aspects of that society. And it is always very difficult to solicit from independent media particularly only praise and plaudits. They will always have a critical eye and will always try to find fault. I tell my particularly European and American audiences, here in Saudi Arabia we have grown up with a practice when we look at others that we don't judge them by their faults, but rather we judge them by their merits. And we try to see the merit if they have any, and so on. And hopefully, I ask them, when I speak to them, that when they look upon us and engage with us, that they will also treat us in the same manner. That while viewing our faults, that they would also see where our merits are. And the only way you can do that is by engaging with them. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Now, with the kingdom being the president of the G20 for the upcoming year, and with that question and with your answer, be ourselves. I think that we will show what a great nation Saudi is, and we just need to be ourselves because we have a lot to share with the rest of the world. Just be ourselves, exhibit the merit that we know inherited in our well-being. Any more question, Yanura, from the audience? Yeah. So what's your really thoughts on the G20 honor that Saudi Arabia is taking for the next year?
It's a great opportunity to do exactly what I was saying. We're having the world coming to us. And I know that government and non-government organizations are already engaged in that process. I read in the papers, of course, that the government departments responsible for this, whether the Foreign Ministry or Foreign Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Energy, etc., and the Royal Diwan, have canvassed the views of previous hosts of the G20, more recently the Japanese, who were the last hosts of the G20, and trying to learn from their experience. And I'm sure the hospital is engaged in that process with other institutions here. The King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies is a partner with CAPSARC, which is the energy research center of the Ministry of Energy, in doing a lot of activity in what is called the T20. So that is something that will have workshops, lectures, tours of places, etc., and engagement with others in order to present the kingdom as it should be presented before the summit is held next November. So if anyone here has anything to contribute, I hope that you will get in touch with the King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies, and I'm sure that the people doing the work there will benefit from whatever ideas or views that you may have.
Thank you. Absolutely. We look forward, to leveraging on this, moving the healthcare agenda forward and using this opportunity. I think we're in our last minute. Unfortunately, absolutely. I mean, the time flies very, very quick when you have pleasant moments. So since the talk targets current leaders and future leaders, what would be the message that you want to leave us with?
Please take care of us senior citizens. But more seriously, I think the world is ahead of you, and you just walk the path. Don't think of failure, think of success, and you will face obstacles, you will face problems, etc. Don't let them affect you. Just carry on. And you know who you are, and once you admit to yourself that you have something to contribute, then do that. Just contribute. And thank you for listening to me. And hopefully you will engage with the King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies in the work that we do of lectures and conferences and workshops, and come and visit us and see what we have to present to you. And thank you for your wonderful questions.
So please allow me to invite to the stage His Excellency, our Chairman of the Board, Dr. Qasim Al-Qasabi, to leave you with something to remember us with.